Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Library. Tonight, we are descending into one of Earth's last great frontiers, a realm so vast and mysterious that it holds more secrets than all the stars we can see in the night sky. We are drifting down into the deep sea, where darkness is absolute, pressure is crushing, and yet, life finds ways to not merely survive, but to flourish in extraordinary beauty. This is a place where the rules change, where creatures glow with their own light, where mountains taller than Everest rise from the ocean floor, and where the chemistry of existence itself is rewritten. If you enjoy these quiet explorations, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, just breathe. Let the night settle around you. Allow your mind to grow quiet as we sink beneath the waves, deeper and deeper, into a world that few will ever witness. Let's begin. The deep sea begins where sunlight ends. At around 660 feet below the ocean's surface, something profound happens. The warm, bright world above begins to fade into twilight. This boundary marks the edge of what scientists call the epipelagic zone, the sunlit layer where most marine life we know exists. But below this threshold, we enter a different realm entirely. The mesopelagic zone, also called the twilight zone, lies between about 660 and 3,300 feet below the ocean's surface. Here, light becomes a memory, filtering down in faint blue whispers that grow dimmer with every passing fathom. The water temperature drops, the pressure builds, and the ocean reveals its true character, not as a single ecosystem, but as a layered cathedral of distinct worlds, each more alien than the last as we descend deeper into the abyss. Beyond the twilight zone lies complete and total darkness. At depths exceeding 3,300 feet, we enter the bathypelagic zone, a realm of perpetual night. No trace of sunlight has reached these waters for millions of years. The darkness here is not merely the absence of light. It is absolute, profound, and eternal. Your eyes could never adjust to this blackness, because there is simply nothing to see. Nothing except the occasional flash of bioluminescence, the living light produced by creatures who have learned to make their own illumination in a world where the sun is nothing more than a distant myth. The temperature hovers just above freezing, rarely climbing above 39 degrees Fahrenheit. And the pressure, the relentless, crushing weight of all that water above, reaches over 110 times what we experience at sea level. Every square inch of surface feels the force of more than 1,600 pounds pressing down from all directions at once. Most of Earth is deep ocean. We often think of our planet as a world of continents and countries, of forests and deserts, mountains and valleys. But the truth is more humbling. More than 60% of our planet is covered by water that is deeper than a mile. The deep sea is by far the largest habitat on Earth, vastly exceeding all terrestrial environments combined. If you were to take all the living space on land, every jungle and prairie, every tundra and woodland, and add them together, they would still be dwarfed by the sheer volume of the deep ocean. In fact, 79% of Earth's entire biosphere consists of waters deeper than 3,000 feet. The deep sea is not some marginal environment at the edge of the world. It is the world. It is the norm. And we surface dwellers, with our need for air and sunlight, are the exception, living in a thin shell at the very edge of a planet that belongs, in volume and scope, to the cold, dark waters below. The pressure increases with every 10 meters you descend. One of the most defining features of the deep sea is pressure, an invisible force that shapes everything about life in these depths. For every 33 feet you travel beneath the ocean's surface, the pressure increases by 1 atmosphere. But in the deep ocean, this adds up quickly. At 330 feet, you experience 10 atmospheres of pressure. And at the very bottom of the ocean, in places like the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. To put that in perspective, it is the equivalent of having an African elephant standing on your thumb, or 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of one another, pressing down on a single point. Most organisms with gas-filled spaces like lungs or swim bladders would be instantly crushed. But deep-sea life has adapted. Their bodies are soft, gelatinous, often lacking rigid structures entirely. They are made of the same density as the water around them, so the pressure passes through them harmlessly, as though they were part of the ocean itself. The deep ocean is incredibly cold. While surface waters can be warm and inviting, heated by the sun and stirred by winds, the deep sea remains locked in a perpetual chill. Below about 650 feet, ocean temperatures average only 39 degrees Fahrenheit, just barely above freezing. In some regions, particularly near the poles, the water can drop even lower, approaching the freezing point of seawater at around 28 degrees Fahrenheit. It never freezes solid, though, because the salt content lowers the freezing point, and even if it did somehow freeze, the ice would simply float to the surface. Life in the deep has adapted to this relentless cold in fascinating ways. Deep-sea organisms have proteins and cell membranes that remain flexible even in near-freezing temperatures. Their membranes are made of unsaturated fats, similar to olive oil, which stays liquid in the cold, rather than saturated fats like butter, which would harden and become useless. This biochemical adaptation allows their cells to function, their blood to flow, and their muscles to move, even in water so cold it would numb a human to unconsciousness within minutes. Natural light does not penetrate the deep ocean. Photosynthesis, the process by which plants and algae use sunlight to create energy, is impossible in the deep sea. Without plants, there are no primary producers, no foundation for a traditional food web. And yet, life thrives. The deep ocean is not a barren desert. It is populated by a remarkable diversity of creatures, from bacteria to fish, from jellyfish to squid. But how do they survive without sunlight? The answer lies in adaptation and patience. Much of the food in the deep sea comes from above, in the form of marine snow. This is not frozen precipitation, but rather a gentle, constant rain of organic material, dead plankton, fecal pellets, mucus webs, and the decaying remains of animals that died in the sunlit waters far overhead. This detritus drifts slowly downward, taking weeks or even months to reach the ocean floor. By the time it arrives, much of its nutritional value has been stripped away by scavengers and bacteria in the layers above. Only about 5% of the food produced at the surface ever makes it to the abyssal plains below. Life in the deep is sustained by scraps, by patience, and by an astonishing ability to extract every possible calorie from the meager resources available. Some deep-sea creatures rely on chemosynthesis instead of photosynthesis. In certain rare and remarkable environments, life has found a way to bypass the need for sunlight entirely. At hydrothermal vents, cold seeps, and even on the carcasses of dead whales, communities of organisms thrive in total independence from the sun. These ecosystems are powered by chemosynthesis, a process in which bacteria harvest energy not from light, but from chemical reactions. They oxidize compounds like hydrogen sulfide, methane, or hydrogen gas, substances that are toxic to most forms of life, and use the energy released to convert carbon dioxide into organic matter. These chemosynthetic bacteria form the base of a unique food chain, one that has no need for photosynthesis, no need for plants, and no connection to the sunlit world above. They are eaten by clams, mussels, and tube worms, which in turn support crabs, fish, and octopuses. It is a complete, self-sustaining ecosystem built on chemistry alone, a reminder that life is far more versatile and resilient than we once believed. Bioluminescence is the most common form of communication in the deep sea. In a world without sunlight, organisms have evolved to make their own light. Bioluminescence is the production of light through chemical reactions within an organism's body. It is so common in the deep ocean that it may be the most widespread form of communication on the entire planet. Scientists estimate that up to 90% of all deep-sea organisms produce light in some form. This light is not warm or white like sunlight. It is typically blue or green, wavelengths that travel farthest through water. The light is produced when a molecule called luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase. The result is a cold light, emitting almost no heat, only photons. Different species use bioluminescence for different purposes. Some use it to attract prey, dangling glowing lures in front of their mouths like living fishing rods. Others use it to find mates, flashing specific patterns that signal their species and availability. Some emit light to startle or confuse predators, creating a sudden burst of brightness that allows them to escape into the darkness. And a few even use bioluminescence as camouflage, producing light on their bellies to match the faint glow from above, erasing their silhouette and making them invisible to predators looking up from below. The anglerfish is one of the most iconic deep-sea creatures. With its nightmarish appearance, gaping mouth filled with needle-sharp teeth, and glowing lure dangling in front of its face, the anglerfish has become a symbol of the deep ocean's strange beauty. There are over 200 species of anglerfish, and most live in the bathypelagic zone, between 3,000 and 13,000 feet below the surface. The most distinctive feature of the anglerfish is its esker, a fleshy, bioluminescent lure that extends from a modified spine on its forehead. This lure is not actually produced by the anglerfish itself. Instead, it is lit by colonies of bioluminescent bacteria that live inside the esker in a symbiotic relationship. The bacteria provide the light, and the anglerfish provides them with nutrients and a safe place to live. The anglerfish uses this glowing lure to attract prey in the darkness. Small fish and crustaceans, drawn to the light, swim closer to investigate, only to be sucked into the anglerfish's enormous mouth in a fraction of a second. The anglerfish is an ambush predator, drifting motionless in the water, conserving energy, waiting for food to come to it. This strategy makes sense in an environment where meals are rare and every calorie must be carefully conserved. Hydrothermal vents are underwater hot springs on the ocean floor. In certain parts of the deep ocean, where tectonic plates are pulling apart or volcanic activity is high, seawater seeps down through cracks in the Earth's crust. As it descends, it is heated by magma chambers miles below the seafloor, reaching temperatures of over 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Under the immense pressure of the deep ocean, this superheated water does not boil. Instead, it dissolves minerals and gases from the surrounding rock, becoming a chemical soup rich in sulfur, iron, copper, zinc, and other elements. Eventually, this hot, mineral-laden water rises back toward the seafloor and erupts from openings called hydrothermal vents. When the superheated fluid meets the near-freezing seawater, the dissolved minerals precipitate out almost instantly, forming chimney-like structures that can grow to heights of 30 feet or more. These chimneys are called black smokers or white smokers, depending on the color of the minerals they emit. Black smokers release fluids rich in iron sulfide, giving them a dark, smoky appearance. White smokers emit lighter minerals like barium, calcium, and silicon, creating pale, ghostly plumes. Hydrothermal vents were first discovered in 1977. Before that year, scientists believed that the deep ocean floor was a lifeless wasteland, a cold, dark desert devoid of significant biological activity. But during an expedition to the Galapagos Rift, a mid-ocean ridge in the eastern Pacific, researchers aboard the submersible Alvin made a discovery that would revolutionize our understanding of life on Earth. They found hydrothermal vents spewing superheated water into the abyss, and surrounding these vents were thriving ecosystems unlike anything ever seen before. Giant tube worms, some over 6 feet long, swayed in the currents. White crabs scuttled across the rocky terrain. Clams the size of dinner plates clustered around the vents, and clouds of bacteria floated in the water, feeding on the chemicals pouring from the earth. It was a revelation. Here was life flourishing in conditions that should have been utterly hostile. Extreme heat, toxic chemicals, crushing pressure, and absolute darkness. The discovery of hydrothermal vent ecosystems forced scientists to rethink the requirements for life. If organisms could thrive here, in one of the most extreme environments on Earth, then perhaps life could exist in similarly harsh conditions elsewhere, on the moons of Jupiter or Saturn, in subsurface oceans locked beneath ice, or on planets orbiting distant stars. Hydrothermal vent ecosystems are powered by chemosynthetic bacteria. At the base of the food chain around hydrothermal vents are microbes, primarily bacteria and archaea, that perform chemosynthesis. These organisms use the energy from chemical reactions to produce organic matter, converting inorganic carbon from carbon dioxide into sugars and other compounds that can be used by other life forms. The primary chemical reaction involves hydrogen sulfide, a compound that smells like rotten eggs and is highly toxic to most organisms. But to these bacteria, it is fuel. They oxidize hydrogen sulfide, combining it with oxygen from seawater, and use the energy released to build carbohydrates. Other chemosynthetic microbes use methane, hydrogen gas, or even iron as their energy source. These bacteria can live freely in the water, forming dense clouds around the vents, or they can form symbiotic relationships with larger animals. Many vent organisms, including giant tube worms and certain clams and mussels, have no mouths, no digestive systems, and no way to eat in the traditional sense. Instead, they house chemosynthetic bacteria inside their tissues, in specialized organs called trophosome. The bacteria produce food, and the host provides them with a stable environment and access to the chemicals they need. It is a partnership that has allowed complex life to flourish in a place where no traditional food web could ever exist. Giant tube worms are among the most remarkable creatures at hydrothermal vents. Riftia pachyptilla, commonly known as the giant tube worm, can grow up to 8 feet long, making them one of the largest organisms living at vent sites. They have no mouth, no stomach, no digestive tract. Instead, their bodies are filled almost entirely with a spongy tissue called the trophosome, which is packed with billions of chemosynthetic bacteria. These bacteria produce all the nutrients the tube worm needs, and in return, the worm provides them with hydrogen sulfide and oxygen. But how does a creature without a mouth or gut obtain these chemicals? The answer lies in its blood. Tube worms have a bright red plume at the top of their white tubes, and this plume is rich with blood vessels. The blood of Riftia contains a special protein that can bind both hydrogen sulfide and oxygen simultaneously, two chemicals that normally react explosively when they come into contact. This protein safely transports both substances through the worm's body to the bacteria in the trophosome, where they are used for chemosynthesis. The tube worm's blood is so efficient at carrying these gases that it outperforms human hemoglobin by a significant margin. These worms live fast and grow quickly. In the warm, nutrient-rich waters around hydrothermal vents, they can grow over 2 feet per year, a remarkable rate for deep-sea organisms. But they are also vulnerable. When a vent shuts down, which can happen suddenly due to shifts in volcanic activity, the tube worm colonies die. They are tied to their chemical oases, unable to survive without the steady flow of sulfide-rich water. The temperature around hydrothermal vents ranges from freezing to scalding. One of the most striking features of hydrothermal vents is the extreme temperature gradient. The fluid exiting a black smoker can exceed 750 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. But just a few feet away, the water temperature drops back to near freezing, around 36 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. This creates a narrow zone where organisms must carefully position themselves to take advantage of the warmth and nutrients without being cooked alive. Some bacteria thrive in temperatures above the boiling point of water, living right at the edges of the vent openings, where the superheated fluid mixes with cold seawater. These are called thermophiles and hyperthermophiles, organisms that not only tolerate extreme heat, but require it to survive. One species, Methanopyrus candleri, can grow at temperatures as high as 250 degrees Fahrenheit, making it one of the most heat-tolerant organisms known. It lives on the walls of black smoker chimneys, harvesting energy from hydrogen gas and releasing methane as a byproduct. Other microbes, like Pyrolobus fumari, can survive even higher temperatures and have been found thriving in conditions that would instantly sterilize most life. These extremophiles expand our understanding of the limits of biology, showing that life can adapt to conditions far beyond what we once thought possible. Hydrothermal vents come in different types. Not all hydrothermal vents are the same. Black smokers, with their dark, mineral-rich plumes, are the most dramatic and well-known. They form at mid-ocean ridges where tectonic plates are spreading apart, and fresh magma is rising to create new oceanic crust. The fluids they emit are extremely hot and acidic, laden with metals like iron, copper, and zinc. White smokers, by contrast, emit cooler fluids, typically below 570 degrees Fahrenheit, and their plumes are lighter in color due to minerals like barium, calcium, and silicon. White smokers often form farther from the main upflow zone of a hydrothermal field, where the fluids have had more time to cool and mix with seawater. There are also diffuse flow vents, which are not as visually spectacular, but are biologically important. These vents release warm water through cracks and fissures in the seafloor, creating shimmering, almost invisible flows. The temperatures are lower, usually below 180 degrees Fahrenheit, making them more hospitable to life. Dense communities of animals, including crabs, shrimp, and fish, congregate around these diffuse vents, feeding on the chemosynthetic bacteria that thrive in the mixing zone between hot, chemical-rich water and cold, oxygen-rich seawater. Hydrothermal vents may hold clues to the origin of life on Earth. Some scientists believe that life on Earth may have begun at hydrothermal vents billions of years ago, long before plants, animals, or even oxygen existed in the atmosphere. The early Earth was a violent place, bombarded by asteroids, racked by volcanic eruptions, and bathed in harsh ultraviolet radiation from the sun. The surface was hostile, but the deep ocean was shielded and stable. At hydrothermal vents, there was energy in the form of chemical reactions, a steady supply of raw materials in the form of dissolved minerals, and a gradient of temperatures and pH levels that could drive complex chemistry. The porous mineral structures of vent chimneys may have acted as natural laboratories, concentrating organic molecules and catalyzing reactions that eventually led to the formation of the first self-replicating molecules, the precursors to life. This hypothesis, known as the hydrothermal vent origin of life theory, is still debated, but it is supported by several lines of evidence. Many of the earliest branches on the tree of life, including ancient bacteria and archaea, are thermophiles, organisms that thrive in hot environments. Their metabolisms are based on chemosynthesis, not photosynthesis, suggesting that they evolved in a world without sunlight. And the chemical conditions at hydrothermal vents, with their abundance of hydrogen, methane, and sulfur compounds, closely match the ingredients thought to be necessary for the first steps of life. If this theory is correct, then hydrothermal vents are not just oases of life in the deep sea. They are the birthplace of all life on Earth. The Mariana Trench is the deepest place on Earth. Located in the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Mariana Islands, the Mariana Trench is a crescent-shaped scar in the ocean floor that stretches for over 1,500 miles. It is a subduction zone, a place where one tectonic plate, the Pacific Plate, is slowly sliding beneath another, the Philippine Sea Plate, diving into the Earth's mantle. This process creates an incredibly deep trench, deeper than any mountain is tall. The deepest part of the Mariana Trench is called the Challenger Deep, a small, steep-walled valley near the southern end of the trench. Measuring the exact depth of the Challenger Deep is challenging due to the technical difficulties of working at such extreme depths, but recent surveys place it at approximately 10,935 meters, or 35,876 feet, below sea level. To put that in perspective, if you placed Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth, at the bottom of the Challenger Deep, its peak would still be more than a mile underwater. The Mariana Trench is not just a geographical feature. It is a testament to the vastness and mystery of the deep ocean, a place so remote and inhospitable that it has been visited by fewer people than the surface of the Moon. The Mariana Trench was first discovered in 1875. During the British Royal Navy's Challenger expedition, one of the first major scientific expeditions dedicated to exploring the world's oceans, a weighted rope was lowered into the Pacific Ocean southwest of Guam. The rope descended over 4 miles before finally striking the ocean floor, recording a depth of 26,850 feet. It was the deepest point ever measured at the time, and the discovery sparked both wonder and disbelief. Could such depths truly exist? It was not until 1951 that another British research vessel, HMS Challenger 2, returned to the site equipped with modern echo-sounding technology. This time, they recorded a depth of over 35,600 feet. The measurements have been refined many times since, using increasingly sophisticated sonar and pressure sensors. But the Challenger Deep remains, without question, the deepest known point on Earth. The discovery of the Mariana Trench fundamentally changed our understanding of the ocean. It revealed that the seafloor is not a flat, featureless plain, but a landscape of mountains, valleys, and trenches, every bit as dramatic as anything found on land. Only a handful of people have descended to the bottom of the Challenger Deep. On January 23, 1960, Swiss oceanographer Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh climbed into the bathyscaphe Trieste, a deep-diving submersible designed to withstand the crushing pressures of the deepest ocean. After hours of slow descent, they reached the bottom of the Challenger Deep, approximately 35,814 feet below the surface. They stayed for only 20 minutes, peering through the small porthole into the icy darkness. To their surprise, they saw life, a flatfish and a shrimp moving across the seafloor. It was the first confirmation that even in the most extreme depths of the ocean, life could exist. For more than 50 years, no one returned to the Challenger Deep. Then, in March of 2012, filmmaker and explorer James Cameron made a solo descent in the submersible Deep-Sea Challenger, reaching a depth of 35,756 feet. He spent several hours on the seafloor, filming and collecting samples. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo made multiple dives to the Challenger Deep in the submersible limiting factor, descending to 35,853 feet and setting a new record for the deepest dive. These expeditions, along with a handful of others, have provided invaluable data about the deepest parts of the ocean, but they have also underscored just how difficult and dangerous it is to reach these depths. Visiting the Challenger Deep is more challenging than going to space. The pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench is over 1,000 atmospheres. At the deepest point of the Challenger Deep, the water pressure reaches approximately 1,100 atmospheres, or over 15,750 pounds per square inch. To experience such pressure on land, you would need 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of one another, all bearing down on a single square inch of your body. For humans, such pressure is instantly lethal. Any gas-filled spaces in the body, lungs, sinuses, inner ears would collapse. Blood vessels would rupture, organs would be crushed. Even the most advanced submarines can only dive to a fraction of this depth before their hulls implode. Only specially designed submersibles with thick, reinforced titanium or steel spheres can withstand the forces at play in the Hadal Zone, the deepest layer of the ocean. But for the creatures that live at these depths, the pressure is not a problem. Their bodies are made almost entirely of water and flexible tissues, with no air-filled cavities. The pressure inside their cells matches the pressure outside, so they experience no crushing force. In fact, deep-sea organisms brought rapidly to the surface often suffer from the opposite problem. The sudden decrease in pressure causes gases dissolved in their tissues to expand, damaging their cells and killing them before they can be studied. Life exists even in the Challenger Deep. Despite the crushing pressure, near-freezing temperatures, and total absence of sunlight, the Challenger Deep is not a lifeless wasteland. Scientists have discovered a surprising diversity of organisms living at these extreme depths. The most common creatures are small, simple animals like sea cucumbers, amphipods, and various types of worms. These organisms are scavengers and detritivores, feeding on the sparse organic material that drifts down from the upper ocean. One of the most remarkable discoveries was made during a Chinese expedition in 2024, when researchers aboard the submersible Fenduze, or Striver, descended into the Mariana Trench 23 times. They found thousands of worms and mollusks living at depths ranging from 8,200 feet to over 31,000 feet, the deepest colony of multicellular organisms ever observed. Even more astonishing, a recent study published in 2025 identified over 7,000 different species of microbes living in sediment and water samples taken from the Challenger Deep. 90% of these microbes had never been seen before, representing entirely new branches of the tree of life. These tiny, single-celled organisms are the true masters of the deep, thriving in conditions that would annihilate most other forms of life. Some deep-sea fish have almost no bones. Many deep-sea fish have evolved to survive in an environment where every ounce of structure is a liability. Bones and dense tissues require energy to build and maintain, and in a place where food is scarce, that energy is precious. As a result, many bathypelagic and abyssopelagic fish have reduced skeletons, soft, cartilaginous bones, or almost no internal structure at all. Their bodies are gelatinous, watery, and nearly neutrally buoyant, allowing them to drift through the water with minimal effort. Some species have lost their swim bladders entirely, as gas-filled organs would be crushed by the pressure. Others have reduced or absent gills, kidneys, hearts, or even swim bladders, as these organs are less critical in an environment where metabolic rates are slow and oxygen is scarce. These fish often have large mouths and expandable stomachs, allowing them to eat prey that is much larger than themselves. In the deep sea, you never know when your next meal will come, so when food does appear, you eat as much as you possibly can. This strategy of extreme opportunism has led to some of the strangest body plans in the animal kingdom. Fish that are little more than mouths and stomachs attached to a loose bag of flesh, drifting silently through the dark. The deep sea is home to the largest eyes in the animal kingdom. In the faint twilight depths of the mesopelagic zone, where only the dimmest traces of sunlight penetrate, vision is still possible, but it requires extraordinary adaptations. Some deep-sea fish, squid and jellyfish, have evolved enormous eyes, far larger than would be expected for their body size. The colossal squid, for example, has eyes the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes of any animal ever recorded. These massive eyes are packed with photoreceptors, specialized cells that detect light, allowing the animal to see in conditions that would appear pitch black to a human. Lenses are large and efficient, gathering every available photon. In some species, the eyes are tubular rather than spherical, pointing upward to detect the silhouettes of prey or predators against the faint glow from above. Other deep-sea creatures have gone in the opposite direction, losing their eyes entirely. In the bathypelagic and abyssopelagic zones, where no sunlight penetrates at all, eyes are useless. Vision is replaced by other senses, highly sensitive lateral lines that detect vibrations in the water, electroreceptors that sense the bioelectric fields produced by muscle contractions, and chemoreceptors that can smell traces of food or mates from great distances. In the deep sea, survival depends not on what you can see, but on what you can sense. Marine snow is the primary food source in the deep ocean. In the absence of sunlight and photosynthesis, most deep-sea organisms rely on a constant, slow rain of organic material falling from the sunlit waters above. This material, known as marine snow, consists of dead plankton, fecal pellets, mucus webs, discarded exoskeletons, and the decaying bodies of fish, squid, and other animals. The particles are small, typically less than a millimeter across, but they are numerous, and they drift downward in a never-ending cascade. The journey from the surface to the abyssal plane can take weeks or even months, and along the way, much of the organic material is consumed by bacteria, zooplankton, and filter-feeding animals. By the time marine snow reaches the deep sea floor, it has lost most of its nutritional value. Only about 5% of the organic matter produced in the sunlit surface waters makes it to the abyssal zone. For animals living at these depths, every scrap of food is precious. Sea cucumbers, brittle stars, and other bottom-dwelling organisms patiently comb the sediment, extracting whatever nutrients remain. Their metabolisms are slow, their growth rates glacial, and they can survive for months or even years without a substantial meal. Some deep-sea organisms can survive for years without eating. In an environment where food is so scarce, deep-sea creatures have evolved remarkable strategies to conserve energy. Many have extremely slow metabolic rates, burning calories at a fraction of the rate of their shallow water relatives. Their body temperature matches the near-freezing water around them, which further slows their metabolism. Some species enter states of near dormancy, reducing their activity to the absolute minimum required to stay alive. They drift motionless in the water column or lie still on the sea floor, waiting. When food does arrive, whether in the form of a clump of marine snow, a dead jellyfish, or the carcass of a whale, they feed voraciously, gorging themselves to store as much energy as possible for the long famine that will follow. This feast or famine existence has led to some extreme adaptations. Certain deep-sea fish have jaws and stomachs that can expand to several times their normal size, allowing them to swallow prey larger than themselves. Others have evolved bioluminescent lures, or elaborate sensory systems to detect the faint chemical traces of food from great distances. In the deep sea, survival is a waiting game, and patience is the ultimate evolutionary advantage. Whale falls create unique ecosystems on the deep sea floor. When a whale dies and sinks to the ocean floor, it brings with it an enormous quantity of organic matter, a sudden, concentrated pulse of food in an environment where nutrients are usually vanishingly rare. A single whale carcass can weigh tens of tons and can support a thriving community of scavengers, decomposers, and chemosynthetic bacteria for decades. The process unfolds in stages. First, mobile scavengers like hagfish, sleeper sharks, and giant isopods arrive to strip the flesh from the bones. This phase can last for months or even years. Next, smaller animals, worms, crustaceans, and mollusks colonize the skeleton, feeding on the remaining soft tissue and the oil-rich bones. Finally, as the bones decay, they release hydrogen sulfide and other chemicals, creating conditions similar to those found at hydrothermal vents. Chemosynthetic bacteria colonize the bones, and an entirely new community of specialized organisms, including bone-eating worms called ossidacs, takes over. These worms have no mouth or digestive system. Instead, they have symbiotic bacteria living in their tissues that break down the fats and proteins in the bones, providing nutrients to the worm. A large whalefall can support life for 50 years or more, creating an oasis of biodiversity on the otherwise barren seafloor. It is a reminder that even in death, life finds a way to persist and flourish in the deep ocean. The deep sea is the largest reservoir of carbon on Earth. The ocean plays a critical role in regulating Earth's climate, and the deep sea is at the heart of this process. Through a mechanism known as the biological pump, organic carbon produced in the sunlit surface waters sinks into the deep ocean, where it is stored for hundreds or even thousands of years. When phytoplankton photosynthesize, they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and convert it into organic matter. When these organisms die, their remains sink, carrying carbon into the deep sea. Some of this carbon is consumed by animals or decomposed by bacteria, releasing it back into the water as dissolved carbon dioxide. But a significant portion is buried in seafloor sediments, effectively removing it from the atmosphere for geological timescales. This process helps to stabilize Earth's climate by preventing the buildup of excessive atmospheric carbon dioxide. However, changes in ocean temperature, circulation, and chemistry, driven by human activities like burning fossil fuels and deforestation, are altering the efficiency of the biological pump. Warmer waters hold less dissolved oxygen, making it harder for marine life to thrive. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of excess carbon dioxide, is making it more difficult for organisms like corals and shellfish to build their skeletons and shells. These changes could weaken the ocean's ability to store carbon, potentially accelerating climate change. Understanding the deep sea and its role in the global carbon cycle is not just a matter of scientific curiosity. It is essential for predicting and mitigating the impacts of a rapidly changing climate. The deep sea remains largely unexplored. Despite centuries of ocean exploration, the deep sea remains one of the least understood environments on Earth. We have better maps of the surface of Mars and the Moon than we do of the ocean floor. It is estimated that we have explored less than 5% of the deep ocean, leaving 95% unmapped, unobserved, and unknown. The challenges are immense. Reaching the deep sea requires specialized equipment that can withstand crushing pressure, near-freezing temperatures, and corrosive seawater. Submersibles, remotely operated vehicles, and autonomous underwater vehicles are expensive to build and operate. And even the most advanced technology can only stay submerged for a limited time. Visibility is minimal, navigation is difficult, and communication with the surface is limited. Yet, every expedition into the deep sea returns with discoveries, new species, unexpected ecosystems, and insights into processes that shape the entire planet. In recent decades, advances in robotics, sonar, and sensor technology have opened new windows into the deep ocean. High-resolution multi-beam sonar can map the seafloor in stunning detail, revealing underwater mountains, canyons, and trenches. Autonomous underwater vehicles can explore vast areas without direct human control, collecting data and samples over weeks or months. And new generation submersibles, equipped with cameras, lights, and manipulator arms, allow scientists to observe and interact with deep-sea life in real time. Each dive, each survey, and each sample brings us closer to understanding this vast, hidden world. But there is still so much left to discover. Deep-sea sediments hold clues to Earth's past. The seafloor is covered in layers of sediment, fine particles of clay, silt, and the remains of microscopic organisms that have been accumulating for millions of years. These sediments are like a geological archive, preserving a record of Earth's climate, ocean chemistry, volcanic activity, and even asteroid impacts. Scientists can drill into the seafloor and extract cores of sediment, long cylindrical samples that capture thousands or even millions of years of history. By analyzing the chemical composition, fossil content, and physical properties of these cores, researchers can reconstruct past ocean temperatures, track the movement of continents, and study the evolution of life. For example, layers of sediment deposited during ice ages contain different ratios of oxygen isotopes than those deposited during warmer periods, allowing scientists to estimate past sea temperatures. Fossils of tiny plankton called foraminifera, which have calcium carbonate shells, can reveal information about ocean acidity and carbon dioxide levels. And ash layers from ancient volcanic eruptions provide precise time markers, allowing researchers to correlate events across different regions of the ocean. The deep sea is not just a place of living organisms. It is a vast library of Earth's history, quietly preserving the story of our planet's past. The deep seafloor is home to mountains taller than Everest. While we often think of the ocean floor as flat and featureless, the reality is far more dramatic. The seafloor is a landscape of towering mountains, deep valleys, vast plains, and jagged ridges. Mid-ocean ridges, where tectonic plates are spreading apart, form underwater mountain ranges that stretch for tens of thousands of miles, encircling the globe like the seams on a baseball. These ridges are dotted with volcanic peaks, some of which rise over 13,000 feet above the surrounding seafloor. A few of these peaks break the surface, forming volcanic islands like Iceland and the Azores, but most remain submerged, hidden beneath miles of water. Seamounts, isolated underwater mountains formed by volcanic activity, are scattered across the ocean floor by the thousands. Some are ancient, long-extinct volcanoes, worn smooth by millennia of currents. Others are active, with lava flows and hydrothermal vents. These seamounts create local hotspots of biodiversity, as currents swirling around them bring nutrients from the deep to the surface, supporting rich communities of fish, corals, and sponges. The tallest seamount, Mauna Kea in Hawaii, rises over 33,000 feet from the ocean floor, making it taller than Mount Everest when measured from base to summit. The deep sea is not a void. It is a world of geology as dynamic and awe-inspiring as any mountain range on land. Brine pools are underwater lakes of extremely salty water. In certain regions of the deep sea floor, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean Sea, there are strange features called brine pools, underwater lakes of water so salty and dense that they do not mix with the surrounding seawater. These pools form when seawater seeps through underground salt deposits, dissolving the salt and creating a brine, a solution far saltier than normal seawater. The brine is so dense that it sinks and collects in depressions on the seafloor, forming pools with distinct shorelines and surfaces. The boundary between the brine and the overlying seawater, called a halocline, acts almost like a physical barrier. Objects and animals that enter the brine can sink through this boundary and settle on the lakebed below. Brine pools are incredibly hostile to most marine life. The high salinity is toxic, and many organisms swim into a brine pool, die almost immediately. Their bodies accumulate on the edges of the pool, creating eerie graveyards of preserved remains. However, some microbes thrive in these extreme conditions, feeding on the methane and other chemicals that seep from the seafloor into the brine. These bacteria form mats on the surface of the brine, creating a living interface between two very different aquatic worlds. Brine pools are a reminder that even within the ocean, there are isolated environments with their own unique chemistry and biology, hidden in the depths. The deep sea is rich in mineral resources. The seafloor is not just a biological frontier, it is also a geological treasure trove, containing vast deposits of valuable minerals. Hydrothermal vents deposit copper, zinc, gold, silver, and other metals in concentrated forms, building up chimney structures and massive sulfide deposits over thousands of years. Manganese nodules, potato-sized lumps of metal ore, carpet large areas of the abyssal plains, formed over millions of years as dissolved metals precipitate out of seawater. And polymetallic crusts, rich in cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements, coat seamounts and ridges. These resources are of increasing interest to industry, as terrestrial sources of certain metals become depleted. Deep-sea mining is being explored as a potential solution to meet the growing demand for materials used in electronics, batteries, and renewable energy technologies. However, the environmental impacts of deep-sea mining are a major concern. Extracting minerals from the seafloor would disturb fragile ecosystems, destroy habitats, and release plumes of sediment that could smother organisms over wide areas. The deep sea has slow recovery times, and damage to vent communities, coral reefs, or nodule fields could persist for centuries or longer. Balancing the economic benefits of deep-sea mining with the need to protect these unique and poorly understood ecosystems is one of the great environmental challenges of the 21st century. Deep-sea corals can live for thousands of years. Unlike their shallow water cousins that depend on sunlight and the photosynthetic algae living in their tissues, deep-sea corals survive in complete darkness, building their structures slowly, patiently, over centuries. These corals do not have symbiotic zooxanthellae to provide them with energy through photosynthesis. Instead, they are filter feeders, capturing tiny particles of food from the water that flows past them. They extend their polyps into the current, catching marine snow, plankton, and organic debris. Because food is scarce and growth is slow, Some deep-sea coral colonies are extraordinarily old. Scientists have found specimens of black coral and gold coral that are over 4,000 years old, making them among the oldest living organisms on Earth. These ancient corals serve as living archives, recording changes in ocean temperature, chemistry, circulation patterns in their growth rings, much like trees record climate history in their annual rings. By studying the chemical composition of coral skeletons, researchers can reconstruct ocean conditions from thousands of years ago, gaining insights into natural climate variability and the long-term impacts of human activities on the ocean. Deep-sea corals create important habitats for other marine life. Although they grow slowly and are found in scattered locations across the deep sea floor, deep-sea corals form complex, three-dimensional structures that provide habitat for a remarkable diversity of organisms. Fish, crustaceans, mollusks, and countless other species use coral colonies as shelter, feeding grounds, and nurseries. The branches and crevices of coral structures offer protection from predators and currents, creating microhabitats within the otherwise relatively barren deep-sea floor. Some fish species spawn exclusively on deep-sea corals, laying their eggs among the branches where they are protected until they hatch. Commercial fish species, including rockfish and orange ruffy, are often associated with deep-sea coral habitats, making these areas important for fisheries. However, this also makes deep-sea corals vulnerable to damage from bottom trawling, a fishing method that drags heavy nets across the sea floor. A single pass of a trawl net can destroy coral colonies that took thousands of years to grow. Because of their slow growth rates, deep-sea corals have little capacity to recover from such disturbances. Once destroyed, they may take centuries or millennia to regrow, if they regrow at all. Protecting deep-sea coral habitats is increasingly recognized as essential for maintaining the health and biodiversity of the deep ocean. The deep sea is full of strange and beautiful creatures. The animals that have adapted to life in the deep ocean are unlike anything found in the sunlit waters above. Evolution in isolation, extreme pressure, and perpetual darkness have produced body forms that seem alien to human eyes. There are fish with transparent heads, allowing them to see through their own skulls. Jellyfish with trailing tentacles over 100 feet long, drifting like living curtains through the water column. Squid with bodies covered in photophores, light-producing organs arranged in patterns unique to each species, flashing in complex sequences to communicate or confuse predators. Sea cucumbers that have evolved to swim rather than crawl, propelling themselves through the water with undulating body movements. Amphipods, small crustaceans related to beach hoppers, that grow to enormous sizes in the deep sea, some reaching over a foot in length. And octopuses that brood their eggs for years, the longest known gestation period of any animal, sitting motionless on the seafloor, protecting their offspring until they hatch, after which the mother, having not eaten for the entire incubation period, dies. Each of these creatures is a masterpiece of adaptation, a solution to the unique challenges of deep-sea life, crafted by millions of years of evolution. Vampire squid are not actually squid. Despite their name and somewhat menacing appearance, vampire squid are not true squid, nor are they octopuses, though they are related to both. Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell, is the only surviving member of an ancient lineage that diverged from squid and octopuses millions of years ago. It lives in the oxygen minimum zone, a layer of the deep ocean where dissolved oxygen levels are so low that most animals cannot survive. Vampire squid have evolved remarkable adaptations to this extreme environment. They have the lowest metabolic rate of any cephalopod, allowing them to survive on minimal oxygen. When threatened, they do not flee or fight. Instead, they turn themselves inside out, pulling their arms up over their body to form a defensive posture that exposes spiny, fleshy filaments that presumably deter predators. They are covered in photophores that can produce flashes of bioluminescent light, creating a spectacular light show to startle or confuse attackers. Unlike true squid, vampire squid do not hunt active prey. They are detritivores, feeding on marine snow. They use two long retractable filaments, unique structures not found in other cephalopods, to collect particles of organic matter from the water. The filaments are covered in sticky mucus that traps food particles, which the vampire squid then wipes into its mouth. This unusual feeding strategy allows it to survive in an environment where active predation would require too much energy. The barrel-eye fish has a transparent head. One of the most bizarre and beautiful creatures in the deep sea is the barrel-eye fish, or spookfish, a small fish that lives in the twilight zone at depths of around 2,000 to 2,600 feet. The most striking feature of this fish is its transparent, fluid-filled dome that covers the top of its head. Through this dome, you can see directly into the fish's skull, where two large tubular eyes point upward. These eyes are incredibly sensitive to light, allowing the barrel eye to detect the faint silhouettes of prey, primarily jellyfish and small crustaceans, against the dim glow from the surface. For decades, scientists believed that the barrel eye's eyes were fixed in an upward position, which seemed like a significant limitation. How could the fish see to eat if its eyes were always looking up? The mystery was solved in 2004, when researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute successfully filmed a live barrel-eye fish in its natural habitat. They discovered that the fish's eyes can rotate within the transparent dome, allowing it to look upward when searching for prey, and then rotate forward to see what it is eating. The transparent dome protects the delicate eyes from the stinging cells of the jellyfish that make up much of its diet. The barrel eye is a perfect example of how evolution can produce solutions that seem almost impossibly clever. Adaptations so specific and strange that they challenge our understanding of what is possible in nature. Giant isopods are deep-sea relatives of pillbugs. If you have ever seen a pillbug or roly-poly, those small, armored crustaceans that curl into a ball when disturbed, then you have met a distant cousin of the giant isopod. Bathynomus giganteus, the giant isopod, is a deep-sea scavenger that can grow up to 16 inches long and weigh over 3 pounds, making it one of the largest members of the isopod family. Giant isopods live on the deep sea floor, crawling slowly across the sediment in search of food. They are opportunistic feeders, eating whatever they can find: dead fish, squid, crabs, and even whale carcasses. Their mouths are equipped with strong mandibles, capable of tearing through tough skin and flesh. Like many deep-sea creatures, giant isopods have a slow metabolism and can survive for long periods without food. In captivity, one individual went without eating for over 5 years before eventually dying. This extreme ability to endure starvation is an adaptation to the deep-sea environment, where meals are unpredictable and may be separated by months or even years. When food is available, giant isopods gorge themselves, eating until they are almost immobile. Their segmented exoskeleton can expand to accommodate large amounts of food, allowing them to store energy for the long fasts ahead. Giant isopods are a reminder that some of the strangest creatures on Earth are not found in exotic jungles or alien planets, but in the cold, dark depths of our own ocean. The deep sea is home to the longest animal on Earth. In 2020, scientists exploring the deep waters off the coast of Western Australia encountered a siphonophore, a colonial organism made up of thousands of individual zooids that measured approximately 120 feet in length. This makes it longer than a blue whale, the largest animal on Earth, and potentially the longest animal ever recorded. Siphonophores are not single organisms but colonies, with each zooid specialized for a specific function: swimming, feeding, reproduction, or defense. They are related to jellyfish and corals and are found throughout the ocean, but many of the largest and most spectacular species live in the deep sea. The body of a siphonophore is a long, delicate string of gelatinous tissue, often arranged in a spiral or coil. Trailing from this central stem are countless tentacles, some over 50 feet long, armed with stinging cells that capture prey. The siphonophore drifts through the water column, its tentacles spread out like a living net, capturing anything that comes into contact with them. Despite their size, siphonophores are fragile, easily damaged by currents, predators, or the act of being brought to the surface. Most of what we know about them comes from observations made by remotely operated vehicles, as they are nearly impossible to collect intact. The discovery of such a massive siphonophore was a reminder that the deep ocean still holds surprises, that there are creatures in the depths that exceed our expectations and challenge our understanding of life's possibilities. Dumbo octopuses are the deepest living octopuses. Grimpoteuthis, commonly known as the Dumbo octopus because of the ear-like fins that protrude from the sides of its head, resembling the ears of the Disney elephant, is a genus of deep-sea octopuses that live at depths of up to 13,000 feet, deeper than any other known octopus species. Dumbo octopuses are small, typically measuring less than 12 inches in length, and they have soft, gelatinous bodies that help them withstand the extreme pressure of the deep sea. Unlike most octopuses, which crawl along the seafloor using their arms, Dumbo octopuses swim by flapping their ear-like fins and pulsing their webbed arms, moving through the water with a grace that seems almost balletic. They hover above the seafloor, searching for prey, which consists mainly of small crustaceans, worms, and bivalves. When they find food, they pounce on it, using their arms to envelop and consume it whole. Dumbo octopuses have relatively large eyes compared to their body size, but vision is still limited in the near-total darkness of the bathypelagic zone. They likely rely on other senses, such as touch and chemical detection, to navigate and find food. Because they live at such great depths, Dumbo octopuses are rarely seen, and much about their biology and behavior remains unknown. They are thought to have a relatively short lifespan, perhaps only 3 to 5 years, and they reproduce slowly, laying a small number of large eggs that take a long time to develop. These factors make them potentially vulnerable to disturbances, though their remote habitat offers some protection from human activities. Snailfish are among the deepest living fish. In the Hadal zone, the deepest layer of the ocean found in the trenches, a remarkable group of fish has adapted to life under the most extreme pressures. Snailfish, members of the family Liparidae, have been found living at depths exceeding 26,000 feet, making them the deepest living fish known to science. These fish are small, typically less than a foot long, with soft, tadpole-like bodies that lack scales. Their skeletons are poorly ossified, meaning their bones are not heavily calcified, which may be an adaptation to reduce weight and maintain flexibility under extreme pressure. Snailfish have gelatinous tissue that is nearly neutrally buoyant, allowing them to hover just above the seafloor with minimal effort. Despite the extreme conditions, snailfish are active predators, feeding on small crustaceans called amphipods. They have well-developed sensory systems, including lateral lines, that detect vibrations in the water and large olfactory organs for smelling. Researchers have discovered that there appears to be a depth limit beyond which fish cannot survive, around 27,000 feet. Below this depth, the pressure is so great that it interferes with the molecular structure of proteins, particularly the protein TMAO, which fish use to stabilize their cells under pressure. Without sufficient TMAO, cell membranes and proteins would collapse, making life impossible. The discovery of this biochemical limit suggests that we may have already found the deepest living fish, that the Hadal snailfish are as deep as fish can go. Some deep-sea creatures are bioluminescent to camouflage themselves. One of the most ingenious uses of bioluminescence in the deep sea is a technique called counter-illumination. Many fish, squid, and shrimp that live in the twilight zone, where faint light from the surface still penetrates, are vulnerable to predators looking up from below. From beneath, these animals appear as dark silhouettes against the brighter water above, making them easy targets. To counter this, they produce bioluminescent light on their undersides that matches the intensity and color of the downwelling light from above. This effectively erases their silhouette, making them nearly invisible to predators and prey alike. Some species have photophores arranged in precise patterns on their bellies, and they can adjust the intensity of their glow to match changing light levels as they move through the water column. Certain squid and fish even have light organs that can change color, allowing them to fine-tune their camouflage. This is not a simple trick. It requires sophisticated sensory systems to detect ambient light levels and complex neural control to modulate bioluminescence accordingly. Counter-illumination is one of the most widespread uses of bioluminescence in the ocean, found in dozens of unrelated species that have independently evolved this solution to the problem of being seen in the twilight zone. The deep sea has its own version of snowfall. Marine snow, as we have mentioned, is the constant downward drift of organic particles from the surface ocean to the depths below. But the deep sea also experiences events that resemble blizzards. When conditions in the surface waters are right, perhaps a massive bloom of phytoplankton or a die-off of jellyfish, enormous quantities of organic material can sink simultaneously, creating pulses of food that descend through the water column like underwater snowstorms. These events are rare and unpredictable, but they can have a profound impact on deep-sea ecosystems. Suddenly, animals that have been surviving on meager rations are presented with a feast. Scavengers converge on the fallen material, feeding intensely before the opportunity disappears. For a brief time, the deep sea floor becomes a hub of activity, a stark contrast to the usual slow-motion existence. Scientists studying these events have found that they can trigger breeding in some species, as the sudden influx of nutrients provides the energy needed for reproduction. Marine snow pulses may also play a role in connecting surface and deep-sea ecosystems, linking the productivity of the sunlit waters to the survival and diversity of life in the abyss. Understanding these events and how they are affected by climate change and ocean conditions is an important area of ongoing research. Glass sponges build intricate skeletons from silica. In certain regions of the deep sea, Particularly in the North Pacific and Antarctic waters, the seafloor is covered with delicate, beautiful structures that resemble intricate lacework or fine-blown glass. These are glass sponges, members of the class Hexactinellida, organisms that build their skeletons not from calcium carbonate like most marine organisms, but from silica, the same material that makes up glass. The skeletons are composed of spicules, tiny, needle-like structures that interlock to form a rigid, porous framework. Some glass sponges are vase-shaped, others form fans or branching structures, and a few grow into massive mounds several meters across. These sponges are filter feeders, drawing water through their porous bodies and extracting bacteria and organic particles. They are remarkably long-lived, with some species estimated to be over 10,000 years old, making them among the oldest animals on Earth. Glass sponges grow extremely slowly, adding only millimeters to their skeletons each year. They are also fragile. Their glassy structures break easily, and damage from trawling, anchoring, or other human activities can destroy sponge beds that took millennia to form. In some regions, glass sponge reefs, rare formations where thousands of individual sponges grow together to create complex three-dimensional habitats, provide shelter for fish and other marine life. These reefs are considered biodiversity hotspots and are now protected in some areas to preserve their unique ecosystems. Bone-eating worms devour the skeletons of dead whales. When a whale carcass sinks to the sea floor, it provides not only soft tissue for scavengers, but also a massive store of lipids, fats, and oils, locked within the bones. Osedax, a genus of bone-eating worms, has evolved a unique strategy to exploit this resource. These worms, which are only a few centimeters long, bore into whale bones using a root-like structure that secretes acid to dissolve the bone material. They have no mouth, no stomach, and no digestive tract. Instead, they rely entirely on symbiotic bacteria living in their tissues. The bacteria break down the fats and proteins in the bones, providing nutrients to the worm. Osedax worms are remarkably specialized, found almost exclusively on the bones of marine mammals, though they have occasionally been discovered on the bones of large fish and sea turtles. They are sexual dimorphs, meaning males and females drastically different in size and appearance. Females are the visible, root-bearing individuals that bore into bones. Males are microscopic, hundreds of times smaller than females, and live inside the females' bodies, essentially functioning as parasitic sperm producers. This extreme sexual dimorphism is thought to be an adaptation to the rarity of whale falls. When a female colonizes a new bone, it is advantageous for her to carry her own males, rather than hoping another independent male will find her in the vast, empty, deep sea. Osedax worms were only discovered in 2002, a reminder of how much remains unknown about the life cycles and biodiversity of deep-sea organisms. Some deep-sea fish have teeth so large they cannot close their mouths. In an environment where food is scarce and meals are rare, some deep-sea fish have evolved enormous jaws and teeth to ensure they do not miss an opportunity to feed. The fangtooth fish, for example, has teeth so large relative to its body size that they protrude even when its mouth is closed. The longest teeth, located on the lower jaw, are so large that the fish has special sockets in its skull to accommodate them when the mouth is shut. The fangtooth may look ferocious, but it is actually quite small, typically only about 6 inches long. It hunts by swimming slowly through the water with its mouth open, relying on contact to trigger a rapid bite reflex. Once it clamps down on prey, the backward curving teeth make escape nearly impossible. Other deep-sea fish, like the viperfish, have similar adaptations. The viperfish has teeth so long that they extend past its head, and it must open its mouth at an extreme angle to swallow prey. These exaggerated features are not just for show. They are functional adaptations that increase the chances of capturing and consuming prey in an environment where every meal is precious. Deep-sea anglerfish have different species of glowing bacteria. Research on anglerfish has revealed something surprising. Different species of anglerfish are colonized by different species of bioluminescent bacteria. This suggests that the relationship between anglerfish and their bacterial partners is not a single, ancient symbiosis shared by all anglerfish, but rather multiple independent partnerships that have evolved separately in different lineages. The bacteria belong to the genus Alliivibrio, or related groups, and genetic studies have shown that their genomes are highly reduced, meaning they have lost many genes over time. This is typical of symbionts that live inside host organisms, as they come to rely on the host for nutrients and metabolic functions they no longer need to produce themselves. Interestingly, the bacterial genomes still retain genes for building flagella, the whip-like tails bacteria use to swim, suggesting that they spend at least part of their life cycle as free-living organisms in the water before being acquired by young anglerfish. Understanding how anglerfish find and select their bacterial partners is an ongoing area of research. Do the bacteria exist in high concentrations in certain parts of the ocean, waiting to be picked up? Or do adult anglerfish somehow inoculate their offspring, passing bacteria from one generation to the next? Both strategies may be at play, giving anglerfish multiple ways to ensure they end up with the right glowing partners. Deep-sea creatures often have slow growth rates and long lifespans. In the cold, low-energy environment of the deep sea, life unfolds at a slower pace. Many deep-sea organisms grow extremely slowly and live much longer than their shallow water relatives. Orange ruffy, a deep-sea fish that lives at depths of up to 6,000 feet, can live for over 150 years, and females do not reach sexual maturity until they are around 30 years old. Grenadiers, another group of deep-sea fish, can live for 60 years or more. Deep-sea sharks, including the Greenland shark, which inhabits Arctic and deep North Atlantic waters, can live for over 400 years, making them the longest-lived vertebrates known. This slow pace of life has important implications for conservation. Species that grow slowly and reproduce infrequently are highly vulnerable to overfishing and environmental disturbances. If a population is depleted, it may take decades or even centuries to recover. The orange ruffy fishery, for example, collapsed in several regions after intensive trawling in the 1980s and 90s, and despite fishing closures, populations have shown little sign of recovery. Understanding the life histories of deep-sea species is essential for managing human activities in the deep ocean and ensuring that these remarkable creatures are not lost before we even have a chance to study them. The deep ocean is surprisingly noisy. We often imagine the deep sea as a place of silence, but it is actually filled with sound. Water is an excellent conductor of sound waves, far better than air, and sound can travel for hundreds or even thousands of miles through the ocean. Whales, dolphins, and other marine mammals produce complex vocalizations that echo through the depths. The songs of humpback whales, the clicks of sperm whales, and the eerie calls of beaked whales can all be detected in deep water. But it is not just animals that make noise. The ocean itself is full of sounds. ice cracking in polar seas, earthquakes rumbling along fault lines, underwater volcanoes erupting, waves crashing on distant shores, and even the sound of rain hitting the surface can all be heard in the deep ocean. In recent decades, human-made sounds have become a significant part of the underwater soundscape. Shipping noise, sonar, oil and gas exploration, and underwater construction all contribute to what is known as ocean noise pollution. For animals that rely on sound to communicate, navigate, and find food, this added noise can be disruptive, interfering with their ability to hear and respond to important signals. Understanding the impact of noise pollution on deep-sea ecosystems is an emerging field of research, one that is becoming increasingly important as human activities in the ocean expand. Deep-sea fish can produce red bioluminescence. Most bioluminescence in the deep sea is blue or green, colors that travel farthest through water and are most easily detected by the visual systems of marine animals. But a few deep-sea fish, including the stoplight loose-jaw dragonfish, have evolved the ability to produce red bioluminescent light. This is a remarkable adaptation because most deep-sea animals cannot see red light. Their eyes are adapted to detect blue and green wavelengths, and red light is effectively invisible to them. The stoplight loosejaw uses this to its advantage. It has a red light organ beneath its eye that it can use like a flashlight, illuminating prey without being seen. The fish can see the red light reflected off potential meals, but the prey, unable to detect red wavelengths, remains unaware that it is being watched. This gives the dragonfish a significant hunting advantage, allowing it to observe and stalk prey from close range without revealing its presence. How the dragonfish is able to see red light when other deep-sea fish cannot is still being studied, but it appears to involve specialized pigments in their eyes that shift their visual sensitivity toward longer wavelengths. This is one of many examples of the evolutionary arms race that has played out in the deep sea, where predators and prey continually evolve new strategies to outwit one another. Some deep-sea animals glow to communicate with each other. While bioluminescence is often used to attract prey or deter predators, it also serves as a form of communication among members of the same species. Lanternfish, one of the most abundant groups of fish in the ocean, have species-specific patterns of photophores on their bodies. These light organs are arranged in unique configurations, almost like a barcode, that allow individuals to recognize members of their own species in the darkness. This is especially important for mating. In the vast, empty expanse of the deep sea, finding a mate can be extraordinarily difficult, and using bioluminescent signals to advertise one's presence and species identity can make the difference between reproducing and dying alone. Some squid use rapid flashes of bioluminescence to communicate, creating patterns that may convey information about size, sex, or readiness to mate. Certain jellyfish and siphonophores produce glowing displays when disturbed, possibly as a way to signal danger to others nearby, or to attract secondary predators that might attack whatever disturbed them in the first place, a strategy known as the burglar alarm hypothesis. The specific meanings of many bioluminescent signals remain a mystery, but it is clear that in the deep sea, light is not just a tool for survival. It is a language, a way for organisms to reach out across the darkness and connect with others of their kind. Hydrothermal vent communities can go extinct when vents shut down. Hydrothermal vents are ephemeral features on the seafloor. They can remain active for decades or even centuries, but eventually, changes in volcanic activity or shifts in the underlying magma chambers cause them to shut down. When a vent stops flowing, the chemosynthetic bacteria that form the base of the food chain die. Without the bacteria, the animals that depend on them have no food source, and the entire community collapses. Tube worms, clams, mussels, and other vent specialists die, leaving behind empty shells and skeletons as the only evidence of the thriving ecosystem that once existed there. However, vent communities are not entirely isolated. Hydrothermal vents are scattered along mid-ocean ridges and other volcanically active areas, and over geological timescales, new vents open as old ones close. Vent species have evolved strategies to disperse and colonize new sites. Many have planktonic larvae that drift in the deep-sea currents, sometimes traveling hundreds of miles before settling at a new vent. This ability to disperse helps maintain genetic diversity and allows vent communities to persist, even as individual vents come and go. Scientists have found that certain vent species are cosmopolitan, found at vent sites across entire ocean basins, while others are endemic, restricted to small geographic areas. Understanding the connectivity between vent communities and the factors that influence dispersal and colonization is important for predicting how these ecosystems will respond to natural changes and human disturbances, including potential deep-sea mining activities that could destroy vent habitats. The deep sea is warming due to climate change. The oceans absorb over 90% of the excess heat trapped by greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and much of this heat is being stored in the deep ocean. While the surface waters of the ocean have warmed measurably over the past century, the deep sea has also experienced temperature increases, albeit more slowly. Deep ocean temperatures have risen by only a few hundredths of a degree Celsius, but even this small change can have significant impacts on ecosystems that are adapted to extremely stable conditions. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen, and as the deep ocean warms, oxygen levels are declining, a process known as ocean deoxygenation. This can stress or kill deep-sea organisms, particularly those with high metabolic demands. Warming can also affect the circulation of ocean currents, which play a critical role in distributing heat, nutrients, and oxygen around the globe. Changes in deep ocean circulation could alter the delivery of food to the deep sea, disrupting ecosystems that depend on the steady rain of marine snow from above. The deep ocean has long been seen as a stable, unchanging environment, but climate change is demonstrating that no part of the ocean is immune from the impacts of human activities. Monitoring the deep ocean and understanding how it is changing is essential for predicting the future of marine ecosystems and the services they provide to humanity. Ocean acidification affects the deep sea. As the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it undergoes a chemical transformation. The carbon dioxide reacts with seawater to form carbonic acid, which lowers the pH of the water, making it more acidic. This process, known as ocean acidification, affects the entire ocean, from surface waters to the deep sea. In the deep ocean, acidification can have particularly severe impacts on organisms that build shells or skeletons from calcium carbonate, such as deep-sea corals, mollusks, and certain plankton. Calcium carbonate dissolves more easily in acidic water, and as the ocean becomes more acidic, these organisms struggle to build and maintain their structures. Deep-sea corals are especially vulnerable because they grow in areas where the water is already naturally low in carbonate ions, the building blocks of calcium carbonate. Even small increases in acidity can push conditions past a tipping point, causing coral skeletons to begin dissolving. This not only threatens the corals themselves, but also the diverse communities of organisms that depend on coral habitats for shelter and food. Ocean acidification is often called the other CO2 problem, and it is one of the most serious long-term threats facing the ocean. Unlike warming, which can be reversed if greenhouse gas emissions are reduced, acidification is more difficult to undo, as it would require removing vast amounts of carbon dioxide from the ocean, a process that would take centuries. Deep-sea mining could harm fragile ecosystems. The deep seafloor is rich in minerals, and as demand for metals used in electronics, batteries, and renewable energy technologies grows, interest in deep-sea mining is increasing. Companies are exploring ways to extract polymetallic nodules from abyssal plains, mine massive sulfide deposits at hydrothermal vents, and harvest cobalt-rich crusts from seamounts. However, deep-sea mining would have profound environmental impacts. Harvesting nodules involves using large machines to scrape or vacuum the seafloor, destroying habitats and creating plumes of sediment that could smother organisms over wide areas. Mining at hydrothermal vents would disrupt unique ecosystems that exist nowhere else on Earth. And because deep-sea organisms grow slowly and reproduce infrequently, recovery from such disturbances could take decades, centuries, or longer. Some habitats may never recover. There is also concern about the release of toxic materials, the noise and light pollution from mining operations, and the potential for species extinctions before they are even discovered. The deep sea is one of the least explored environments on Earth, and we are still discovering new species with every expedition. Mining the deep seafloor before we fully understand what lives there and how ecosystems function is a gamble with unknown consequences. Balancing the economic benefits of deep-sea mining with the need to protect these irreplaceable ecosystems is one of the great environmental challenges of our time, and it will require careful regulation, international cooperation, and a commitment to sustainability. The deep sea plays a critical role in regulating Earth's climate. The ocean is the planet's largest carbon sink, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it in various forms, from dissolved gas to organic matter buried in seafloor sediments. The deep sea is a key part of this system. Through the biological pump, organic carbon produced at the surface sinks into the deep ocean, where it is stored for centuries or millennia. Through the solubility pump, cold, dense water at high latitudes sinks and carries dissolved carbon dioxide into the deep ocean, where it remains sequestered until the water eventually upwells elsewhere. The deep sea also stores vast amounts of heat, buffering the atmosphere from the full impact of greenhouse gas emissions. Without the ocean's capacity to absorb heat and carbon, global warming would be far more severe than it already is. However, the ocean's ability to continue playing this role is not infinite. As the ocean warms and becomes more acidic, its capacity to absorb carbon dioxide decreases. Changes in ocean circulation could alter the efficiency of the biological and solubility pumps, potentially releasing stored carbon back into the atmosphere and creating a positive feedback loop that accelerates climate change. Understanding the deep ocean's role in the climate system and how it is responding to human activities is essential for predicting future climate scenarios and developing strategies to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Plastic pollution has reached the deepest parts of the ocean. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo descended to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and made a disturbing discovery. Among the alien creatures and strange geology, he found a plastic bag and candy wrappers. Plastic pollution, which has become one of the most visible environmental crises of our time, has infiltrated even the most remote and inaccessible parts of the ocean. Microplastics, tiny fragments of plastic less than 5 millimeters in size, have been found in deep-sea sediments, in the stomachs of deep-sea fish, and even in the tissues of organisms living at the bottom of ocean trenches. How plastic reaches these depths is still being studied, but it is likely that plastic particles sink along with marine snow, are ingested by animals that then carry them into deeper waters, or are transported by deep ocean currents. The impacts of microplastics on deep-sea organisms are not yet fully understood, but there is growing concern that they could interfere with feeding, digestion, and reproduction. Microplastics can also absorb and concentrate toxic chemicals, acting as vectors for pollutants. The presence of plastic in the deepest parts of the ocean is a stark reminder that there is no place on Earth untouched by human activities, and that the consequences of our actions can reach far beyond what we can see. Deep-sea research requires cutting-edge technology. Exploring the deep ocean is one of the most technologically challenging endeavors humans have undertaken. The extreme pressure, corrosive saltwater, near-freezing temperatures, and total darkness require specialized equipment that can operate reliably under conditions that would destroy most machinery. Manned submersibles like Alvin, Shinkai, and the Limiting Factor are small, pressure-resistant spheres that can carry 1 to 3 people to depths of several miles. These submersibles are equipped with cameras, lights, robotic arms, and sampling tools, allowing scientists to observe and collect specimens from the sea floor. However, manned missions are expensive, time-consuming, and limited in duration. So much deep-sea research is now conducted using remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, and autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs. ROVs are tethered to a ship at the surface by a cable that provides power and allows real-time control and video transmission. AUVs operate independently, following pre-programmed missions to map the seafloor, collect water samples, or survey biological communities. Hybrid vehicles combine the capabilities of both, able to operate autonomously or be controlled remotely as needed. In recent years, advances in sonar, sensors, and imaging technology have revolutionized our ability to explore the deep sea, allowing us to create detailed maps of the seafloor, detect hydrothermal plumes from miles away, and study deep sea life in unprecedented detail. The deep sea is one of the last frontiers for scientific discovery. Despite centuries of ocean exploration, we have barely scratched the surface of what the deep sea has to offer. Every expedition returns with new species, unexpected ecosystems, and insights that challenge existing theories. In 2017, scientists discovered over 100 new species during a single expedition to the deep waters off Australia. In 2019, researchers exploring the Atacama Trench found fish living at depths previously thought to be uninhabitable. And in 2021, a team studying the Mariana Trench identified thousands of previously unknown microbes, expanding our understanding of microbial diversity and the limits of life. These discoveries are not just curiosities. They have practical implications for medicine, biotechnology, and our understanding of life itself. Enzymes from deep-sea bacteria are used in industrial processes and medical diagnostics. Compounds from deep-sea organisms being studied for their potential as antibiotics, anti-cancer agents, and other pharmaceuticals. And studying life in the extreme conditions of the deep sea helps scientists understand the potential for life on other planets and moons, expanding the search for extraterrestrial life beyond Earth-like environments. The deep sea is a treasure trove of biological, geological, and chemical discoveries, and we have only just begun to unlock its secrets. The deep ocean is interconnected with the rest of the planet. The deep sea is not an isolated realm. It is intimately connected to the rest of the ocean and to the planet as a whole. Currents link surface and deep waters, carrying heat, nutrients, and organisms across vast distances. The larvae of deep-sea animals drift in the open ocean, connecting populations separated by hundreds or thousands of miles. And the chemical and biological processes that occur in the deep sea influence global cycles of carbon, nitrogen, and other elements, affecting climate, weather, and the health of ecosystems around the world. Changes in one part of the ocean ripple outward, affecting distant ecosystems in ways that are often unpredictable. Overfishing in coastal waters can deplete populations that serve as food sources for deep-sea predators. Pollution from land-based sources can accumulate in the deep ocean, contaminating sediments and organisms. And climate change, driven by greenhouse gas emissions from human activities, is altering ocean temperature, chemistry, and circulation in ways that reverberate through the entire marine environment. Understanding these connections is essential for managing human activities and protecting the health of the ocean and the planet as a whole. The deep sea is not a distant, irrelevant place. It is part of our world, and its fate is intertwined with our own. Deep-sea explorers continue to push the boundaries of what is possible. The history of deep-sea exploration is a story of human curiosity, ingenuity, and determination. From the early days of the Challenger expedition in the 1870s, when scientists first began to systematically study the ocean depths, to the modern era of robotic submersibles and autonomous vehicles, each generation of explorers has pushed the boundaries of what is possible. The descent of Piccard and Walsh to the Challenger Deep in 1960 was a milestone, proving that humans could reach the deepest part of the ocean and return safely. James Cameron's solo dive in 2012 demonstrated that advanced technology could allow filmmakers and scientists to document the deep sea in stunning detail. And Victor Vescovo's multiple dives to the deepest points in all 5 oceans showed that deep-sea exploration is becoming more accessible, with the potential for regular, repeated visits to the most remote parts of the ocean. As technology continues to advance, we can expect even more ambitious missions, longer duration expeditions, more detailed surveys, and perhaps even the establishment of permanent research stations on the deep sea floor. The deep sea is no longer beyond our reach. It is a frontier that we are actively exploring, and each new discovery brings us closer to understanding this vast, mysterious, and vitally important part of our planet. And now, as we drift back toward the surface, back toward the familiar world of light and air, let your mind linger a moment longer in the deep. Picture the silent fall of marine snow, the patient crawl of a sea cucumber across ancient sediment, the sudden flash of bioluminescence in the darkness. These images are not just wonders of nature. They are reminders of how vast and mysterious our world truly is, how much lies hidden beneath the surface, and how much remains to be discovered. The deep ocean, cold and dark and distant, is not separate from us. It is part of the same living planet, the same interconnected web of life, water, air, and rock. It shapes our climate, holds our history, and guards countless secrets yet to be revealed. As you close your eyes tonight, know that the deep sea continues on, turning slowly in its ancient rhythms, holding life close in the crushing dark, glowing softly with its own strange light. You have traveled far tonight, deeper than most will ever go, and you have seen what few will ever witness. You have done enough for today. Let the darkness be a comfort, not a fear. Let the pressure ease from your thoughts. Let the cold quiet settle over you like a gentle current, carrying you softly into rest. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, let go, and dream of the deep, where mysteries wait in silence and life, in all its resilience and beauty, endures. Good night.